Hari Om. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurme Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Pranams to Adi Guru, our Pujya Gurus and Guru Parampara. Team Param Vedanta welcomes you all. Namaste. This is the 10th session of Pancadashi chapter 7. We will be covering verses 127 to 143 of Tripti Deepa. These are some kind of warning verses for those who forego a nidhidyasana too early because of overconfidence or over-involvement in port. It weakens the Vedantic teaching. And then when Prarabdha will give us a shock, we will behave like Ajnanis. In spite of the knowledge, Aham Brahma Asmi. In these verses, we will also begin to touch upon the next line of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Kim Icchan Kasya Kamaya. Dr. Komal will also be presenting his favorite Gita verse today. We begin today's session with a recap of last week's session by Dr. Rekha of verses 103 to 126. Over to you, Dr. Rekha.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Recapping the verses of the last class, Vidyaranya talks about nidhidyasana as a method of pratibandha nivritti, removal of the third obstacle of viparita bhavana that comes between jnana and the enjoyment or fruit of jnana, which is jnana phala. The first obstacles were pramana and prameya asambhavana, which were dealt with earlier. Next slide, please. In Shloka 103, we learned that due to firm habit practiced in many lives, Bahujanma Dridabhyasa, the notion of the self as a body arises instantly again and again. Also, the notion that the world is real. This is because I have been a samsari for many janmas from Anadi Kala, and every worldly experience invokes ahankara. In Shloka 104, we learned that the samsari erroneous thinking can be removed by single pointedness of the mind. Even before coming to the true knowledge, single pointedness is obtained by worship on a form or an idol, murti dhyana, which is a form of upasana. Since both upasana and nidhidyasana are involved in mind control, Vedantic meditation will become effortless if a person has practiced saguna upasana before coming to Vedanta, and such a person is a kritopasana. Next slide, please. In Shloka 106, we learned that Tat Chintanam, we think, Tat Kathanam, we discuss, and we dwell on the teaching, I am free here and now. The Brahmabhyasa, which is used in this verse, is a type of nidhidyasana. In Shloka 111, two categories of viparita bhavana misconception are pointed out. The first is dehadi atmatva, feeling that the body, mind, and sense organs are me. And the second is jagat satyatva, thinking the world, starting with the body-mind complex, family and possessions, everything else, is absolutely real when it is actually mithya. They are adhyasa and obstacles to the firmness of my knowledge. Next slide, please. In Shloka 112, we learned that the erroneous conviction is destroyed by meditation on the real entity. A student will therefore meditate first on the self is different from the body, and second on the unreality of the world. In Shloka 113, Vidyaranya enters into an important discussion with the Purva Pakshi question. Should one mentally repeat Aham Brahmasmi thought, as we do in mantra, japa and saguna upasana? Should this also be done in nidhidyasana? Next slide, please. In Shloka 114, we get the answer that asana, time, place, etc. are not important for nidhidyasana because it is drishta phala. It is experienceable removal of habitual wrong notions. On the other hand, rules are important for upasana. For example, the ritualistic offering of food that has to be consumed if one wants punya, and that is adrishta phala. In Shloka 117, we learned that Dehatma Bhavana causes drishta bhada, mental disturbances, worry, which are experienceable. Like hunger is also felt here and now, Kshudeva. Kenapyupayana, one can practice either of the two types of nidhidyasana to master, control, or manage viparita bhavana, either samadhi abhyasa rupa nidhidyasana or brahma abhyasa rupa nidhidyasana. Next slide, please. In Shloka 124, we learned that during nidhidyasana, we should try to reduce sport. As Swami Paramarthananda keeps continuing to tell us, the 4 factors involved in Vyavaharika, preoccupation with possessions, obligations, relationships, and all forms of transactions with the external world. In this verse, what is referred to is agriculture, krishi, business, commerce, kavya, which is literature, tarka, mimamsa, etc. So if we get involved in these activities, the mind gets preoccupied, losing the remembrance of the main goal of contemplation. But the study of the Puranas and other such texts will not lead to forgetfulness regarding the truth itself. In Shloka 126, Vidyaranya says that forgetting Vedanta for a moment does not matter if our nidhidyasana is accompanied, as long as we have a conducive lifestyle, which is tattva, smaraka, vyavahara, activity which keeps us within the fold of Vedantic thinking. So there is less time to commit the aham mama mistake before it gets serious, our worry increases, viparyetum kala nasti. To immediately bring back Vedanta, one should discard raga dvesha towards everything. We will continue further with the study of nidhidyasana in the class. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rekha, for giving us a very complete recap of all the verses, including those verses which we have not covered in our regular classes. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Namah Shri Shankarananda Guru Padambu Janmane Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Graseka Karmane Atmanam Chet Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anusam Chwaret. In today's class, we will be touching verse 134. And with verse 134, we will cover the first line of Atmanam Chet Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha. Swami Paramarthananda has a very nice practice whenever we complete something is to look back. This is also called Simha Avalokanyaya. It is like looking back to see what is that we have got. Now we have studied 134 verses to understand what is this first line of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad? Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha. That means all of us spiritual seekers should know our true nature is Atma. How should we know it? Vijaniyat. We should know it very clearly. And not that Atma is some object. It is not Brahma Asti, but we have to know it as Brahma Asmi. So that is why there is a lot of importance on these words, Ayam Asmi. And therefore, when this knowledge is not about some object, it is about myself, such a knowledge is called Aparoksha Atma Jnanam. Now, what have we achieved so far? The first line is a great accomplishment indeed. We have received this teaching, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha, but now we have to replace the word Jiva with Aham. And Aham Brahma Asmi And this is the claim when a student has come from Brahma Asti. This is what is called Paroksha Jnanam to Aparoksha Jnanam. Now, in this process, we have gone through 5 of the 7 stages of spiritual evolution. What are the 7 stages that Vidyaranya is trying to tell us? A large part of the world population is ignorant about Atma or Brahman, and this is an unexpressed Brahman ignorance. Those who come into the spiritual world become aware that I do not know about Brahman. This is called Avarana. Whenever I do not know my true nature, the mind begins to project, and this projection and all the human suffering, we want to be limitless. We want to be very big. And this comes in the process of all worldly acquisitions to become rich, famous, and all the successes, effort in the world. And that struggle is called Vikshepaha. Those of us who are fortunate to come across a spiritual teacher, come to a teacher who gives us the spiritual wisdom. And this is the 4th stage when the teacher says, Brahma Asti. That means the teacher now imparts with great amounts of confidence that what you are looking for exists. All right. And these words which tell us this are those words from the scriptures, Satyam, Dhyanam, Anantam, Brahma. And this is called the Avantara Vakya. And by this we get indirect knowledge of Paroksha Jnanam. And such a knowledge removes what is called Sattva Avarana. That means there is a covering on the existence of Brahman. Now the teacher has removed that covering, and through the Avantara Vakya, I get an Aparoksha Jnanam that Brahma Asti, and the Sattva Avarana has been removed for me, and I come to the 4th stage or the Paroksha Jnana. Now, all this exercise that we are now doing is from the important 4th stage to the 5th stage. This jump is from Paroksha to Aparoksha. And this happens through a process of a prakriya. It is not just the teacher telling Tattvamasi. The teacher telling you you are Brahman does not make sense to any one of us. The teacher has to do a certain technique, and this technique is called various forms of prakriya. And in that process, what happens is I'm able to experience that consciousness in me as Brahman. Now, the teacher now gives you words of no longer information, but words of introduction. That which I knew about myself all along is now introduced. That consciousness in me is introduced as the Atma Tattva. That consciousness in me is there in all the 3 states, in waking, dream, deep sleep. That consciousness in me, which I see as I am, has been there from Balyadishu, from the time when I'm very small. So the first line has taken us from level 1 to level 5. So the next line will take us to Shoka Nivritti and finally to Tripti Prapti. And Vidyaranya brings this very nicely through the 10th man example and the Paroksha Jnanam as Dashama Asti and the Aparoksha Jnanam in the form of Tatutvamasi or Mahavakya. Interspersed are all these Purva Pakshi questions. Anytime there is a new teaching, the opposite point of view is taken by a very strong proponent, or called the Purva Paksha. And one of the important works for all sincere students would be to collect all the Purva Paksha questions. And we will see, as Param Vedanta itself, we'll see how we can make a special session on the Purva Paksha questions in Tripti Deepa. Now that I have got spiritual knowledge, so we have come to the stage of I have jnanam, but we now need to work on jnana nishta. That is why the V before jnanati, vijanati is so important. So you can see from 97 to 134, that many number of verses works on what are the various obstacles from Brahma Asti to Brahma Asmi. And this is briefly spoken as Pramana Asambhavana, Prameya Asambhavana, and that was worked through Shravanam and Nidhidyasanam. And a lot of time has been spent on these Viparita bhavana, or the vasana riddled habitual obstacles that prevent me. Although I know who I am, I'm not able to have that. And that is where nidhidyasanam becomes so important. Nidhidyasanam itself, Vidyaranya Swami brings it as two forms, Samadhi Rupa and Brahma Abhyasa forms. And between these two forms, a lot of importance is given on this verse number 106, Tat Chintanam, Tat Katanam, Anyon Tat Prabodhanam, Etad Eka Paratvamcha Brahmabhyas Viduhu Buddhaha. Wise people say, this is it. What is that we are doing right now? As we are going through all these Vedantic classes, Anyon Tat Prabodhan, I'm trying to revise our teaching, discussing with each other. Now, if we are able to do this, this is one of the greatest forms of sadhana. And therefore, let us have a lifestyle in which we will get as much opportunities to be able to enter into the teaching. However, if we are involved in too much of activity and we get into port, this will become a problem, and that we will be seeing in class today. Finally, the whole objective is what? Once I understand my true nature, and we will start from now on, Kim Ichan Kasya Kamaya. Now, what is there to do? There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to go. But then I have certain prarabdha related activities to perform. I have no personal desire, but whatever I have to do, let me do it like a jnani. Let me do that 100%. Starting our verses for today will be Ramaji. Ramaji, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Harihi Om. Swami Vidyaranya continues to discuss more about nidhidyasanam. It is meant for Viparita Bhavana Nivrittihi or Dehatma Vasana Nivrittihi. Vidyaranya says, Tattva Smaraka Vyavaharas are conducive for nidhidyasanam. They are those activities which will keep the seeker within the fold of Vedantic thinking that is harmless. Be it Brahmabhyasam as repeated Chintanam, Kathanam and Anyonya Prabodhanam. The seeker should reduce those activities which highlight Jiva Ishvara Bheda. Extroverted activities like Dvaita Shastra Adhyayanam or Krushi Vanijya is unconducive for single-pointed focus on the absolute because of distractions caused by them. In the verse 126, he indicates that Advaita Nivrutti is erroneous conviction about the absolute. This being forgotten is not harmful. There is calamity when this is replaced by the projection of Dehatma Bhavana taken as real, which generates samsara. Then Purva Pakshi questions, is it not possible to strike a balance between Nidhya and Swami answers this in the verse 127. And the verse goes like this, Tatvera Vasaro Nasti Abhyasa Anyabhyasa Shalinaha Pratyuta Abhyalitva Balatam Upekshyate. Swami Vidyaranya says that one cannot pursue both nidhidyasanam and worldly life simultaneously. It's like placing our legs in two boats going in the opposite direction. Reducing nidhidyasanam and involving only in worldly life with both strengthens the false notion of kartrutva and bhoktritva. The strong base of karma yoga purifies aham and mama dvaita vyavaharas and makes gnana yoga easier. However, until one is wholly intent to pursue the absolute, may study various shastras and also enjoy worldly life. It is common to prioritize worldly transactions over spiritual practices. The one desires nothing, but absolute withdraws from the worldly transactions. In the 128, Swami Vidyaranya reminds the Shruti Vakyas in support of his contention. Mandukya Upanishad Mantra 2.2.5 says, Anya Vacho Vimuchatha. May you drop the obsession with all vain talks. The rejection must be total and absolute. Anya Vachaha refers to destructive talks which deal with Anatma and Dvaita. Also, he refers to Bruhadaranya Upanishad Vakyam, which says, Vacho Viglapanam Tata, meaning too many words will certainly strain the organ of speech. The arguments only cause distraction. Swami Vidyaranya had mastered Purva Pakshi's mind and convincingly answers a potential question in the verse 129. Now, Purva Pakshi insists that even Dvaita activities like eating or bathing can also cause distraction. For this, Swami Vidyaranya says, studying advanced shastras are not required for the survival. They are avoidable vyavaharas. But the minimum vyavaharas like aharadi are unavoidable ones. Contemplation on the absolute can be done only if we have a healthy body. Without food, the body cannot even survive, and so eating should not be given up. A short period of not focusing on the absolute does not cause any distraction for Brahmabhyasam. Purva Pakshi further questions as seen in the verse 130, and it says, Janakadehe katham rajyam iti chet drudha bodhataha tatha tavapi chet tarkam patha yadva krushim kuru. If Janaka could be a gnani amidst all these, why I also cannot perform both? How did he manage? Why restrictions on a few Dvaita Vivaharas like Shastra Dhyanam? This you can see in the next slide. Swami Vidyaranya agrees with Purva Pakshi's contention and says the kings like Janaka and Ajatashatru were involved in the Dvaita Vivaharas. As a king, they had all the luxuries, sense pleasures, and also ruled the country effectively. These are all powerful Dvaita Vyavaharas, no doubt. It is because of their firm knowledge of the absolute, they could perform them. So if you can abide in the firm knowledge of the absolute, you can also manage Dvaita Vyavaharas. For an ignorant, total dedication to the absolute and worldly transactions cannot go hand in hand, says Swami Vidyaranya. For a seeker, a period of undivided attention to the absolute is absolutely necessary. The fencing of Shravanam and Mananam is required to protect being carried away by Ahankara and Mamakara. Through nidhidyasana, those kings realize the truth that I am not the body, nothing belongs to me, everything is an appearance in the absolute. They abide in the truth always and conducted their duties just to exhaust prarabdha karmas. Janaka did not forget this even in the worst crisis. He served the mankind out of compassion. Finally, I would like to share an incident from Srimad Ramayana. When King Janaka first met Sri Rama, Janaka told Vishwamitra Rishi, my mind never leaves the absolute even for a moment. The fact that my mind is set on Sri Rama implies that he is the absolute. We should note that firmly rooted in the absolute, Swami Vidyaranya served as the chief minister in the court of Harihara and Bukka. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you very much, Ramaji, for a very nice and a clear presentation of more than the verses that were allotted to you, with a nice take-home message. Verse 127. Here is a very strong, very, very strong message for us. What is the message that we have got? You are the only truth, Brahma Satyam. This world is not so real. Now, whenever we take this world as real, then we get into Vyavahara. And then when Vyavahara or the business of daily life is given a lot of importance to, then what happens? Our port becomes, our possessions become more, our obligations becomes more, our relationships becomes more, our transaction becomes more. Gradually, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya is forgotten. Now, unless this knowledge is reinforced in our day-to-day life, then this great opportunity of Manushutvam, Mukshutvam, Mahapurusha is wasted. And that is why Ramaji very clearly said, we cannot have two legs in two different boats. And if we are in the spiritual path, one of the important commitments is at some stage we have to work on port. Then, of course, there is a nice question that comes from Purva Paksha. Now, here is an example of Janaka. Janaka was taking, now supposing a head of state, can you imagine the kind of activity a head of state has? He is so much preoccupied all the time in worldly activity. When will he get time for internalization? Tat chintanam, tat kathonam. But we know from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, he was the most favorite student of Yajnavalika because he was so much actively taking part in all the spiritual activity. And again, the Purva Paksha's question is answered. Now, we should not take examples of spiritual geniuses and say, why about them? So therefore, we need to be able to, and the answer Vidyaranya gives, if the knowledge is firm, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya has entered into the subconscious mind, please go ahead. And Ramaji gave the example of none other than Vidyaranya Swami himself, who was the Prime Minister and such a great Jnani indeed. This is verse number 131. And in this verse, Mithyatva Vasana Dhardya. Now, that the fact that the world is not so real. Now, there is no English translation for the word mithya. The word mithya does not mean it's unreal. It is wrong to say the world is unreal. The world is of a lower order of reality. Now, what is the best way to give an example? These are examples. Now, if you see a pot, and if you see a pot and you call it a pot, you have one level of reality, it is a pot. But if you see a pot and you are able to see the clay has been there even before it became a pot, and the clay will be there even after that. Therefore, if a person is spiritually wise, when you see a golden ornament, you're not going to see the ornament, you're able to see the gold. That is the meaning of the word mithyatvam. That means when you see the world, you have to train to see existence. When you see other beings like plants and animals, you see the consciousness in the world. And when you see yourself, you have to see Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Ananda is the joy and Anantatvam. And this is the conviction that has to come, Nityatva Vasana Dhardya. And once that is done, then what happens? The moment you are able to see this world is no more so real, you have moved out of that Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam instantly. Instantly, in that instance, the Sanchita Karma, the Agami Karma is gone. But then what happens? Your Prarabdha Karma continues to be there. And this is useful because if your Prarabdha Karma were to, if the karmas were to cease, then a person would die instantly. Can you imagine a state when a person becomes realized and he drops dead? Now you can be realized, but you continue to live as long as the Prarabdha. Then what happens? Prarabdha Kshaya Kankshaya. And then how do you do the rest of your job? The rest of your life is whatever you have been doing before. A Zen master was asked, how was it before enlightenment and after enlightenment? He says, before enlightenment, I used to, draw water from the well. I used to, chop wood and draw water from the well. What do you do now? Now also I chop wood and draw water from the well. Is it to ordinary people, it'll look, what is the difference? But now that is the difference. Initially, you would chop wood and draw water from the well for a certain purpose, either to earn a living or for something. Now it is just time pass. I have to time pass. Swaswa karma anusarataha. So this is the meaning of the word. And the fact that the world is an illusion has become a conviction. Jagan Mithya has become clear. Then what do? You just have to let your prarabdha manifest without undergoing any suffering. And whatever actions that you have to do, I have so many roles to play. How do you play those roles? play those roles sincerely, but not seriously. We come to verse 134. Now, 134 is the most beautiful example that I can say that we have to take from Tripti Deepa. And let this picture be there in your mind. Marge Gantro Dvayo Shranto. Now, along a parikrama path, we are going on a certain parikrama in a mountainous path. Grantaha, that means there are two travelers, Dvaya, two of them. Shranto, both of them are exhausted. Samayam api aduratam, both of them are equidistant from the goal. So there are two of us. One of them is Janan. And who is the Janan? When we have come to 133 verses and we are at the 134th verse, and if you have really studied these verses, call yourself as Janan. Janan means Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahma Iva Naparaha has become very clear to me. One of the two travelers is a Janan. And what does this Janan know? Janan knows that the goal is right around the bend. He knows it is nearby. Then how does he go? How does he proceed? Dhairyat Dhrutam Gachet. With great zeal, he walks very fast because now he knows he is Janan. The other person who does not know it, but he's also like all of us struggling in the path. Anyaha. The other person, Tishtati, he stops there, Dina Dihi, feeling absolutely helpless. Now, this is a great verse. What does it mean? All of us are going through our prarabdha. But those of us who are spiritually awakened through Tripti Deepa and through all the sadhana that we have, and if you have become awakened and you are now a Janan, what do you know? I have to live through my prarabdha, that is all. And my prarabdha may be anything. It is going to be difficult, but I will do it with great amount of zeal. I'm not going to suffer the prarabdha now because I know there is no punarapi jananam for me. I have reached my goal. Now, this is the great significance of this verse about the wise and the otherwise. I will repeat, two travelers having the same goal. Both of them are exhausted. One walks enthusiastically ahead as he knows his destination is around the corner. The other laments and gives up. Now, Tripti Deepa is for the person who is Janan, who is awakened. At this stage, what do we realize? My spiritual journey is over. There is nothing more to do. There is nowhere to go. Swamiji again and again and again emphasizes this one thing. This has to be my clear understanding. And other than clear understanding, nothing more is really required. With these two verses, we come to the conclusion of the first line, Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purusha. And now we go to the next line. In few words, I would just like to say there is nothing more to do. There is nowhere to go. And this should be my very clear understanding. My spiritual journey is over. Dr. Komal, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Now, from verse 135, Vidyaranya enters the second line of the Brihadaranyaka mantra. Atmanam Chet Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anusanjvaret. So this second line is the focus of a very large portion of Tripti Deepa from Shloka 135 up to Shloka 200 is about the second line. Particularly the first part, that is Kimichan, desiring what, is the main thing which is the focus of attention up to verse 191. So we have seen the spiritual journey, the traveler, that's ourselves, we have come up to the level 5, that is Aparoksha Jnana, and then the next jump is Shoka Nivritti. The very purpose why we took this journey is to come out of all the suffering. And that's the jump which we are seeing here. And we are seeing the obstacles to internalize that Aparoksha Jnana are of three kinds. It can be an interpretational problem, that's the Pramana Asambhavana. Prameya Asambhavana, that's a logical problem. Those are those times when we feel, oh, this is good to listen, know as theory, but it's not practical. These two aspects can be negated by continuous Shravana and Manana. The Viparita Bhavana is the third obstacle, which is Viparyaya, which is because of it's like our tendencies, the vasanas which we have built up over a long time, which does not go away easily. If we try to swallow the sweetness of Brahman along with this Viparita Bhavana, Swamiji says, Swami Tejamayanda says that it's like trying to eat a chocolate with its wrapper. We'll get that bitterness along with the actual sweetness of the chocolate. So the way how to come out of that is the important thing is to internalize the negation of triputi, the desiring subject, desiring object, triputi. So Shloka 135 goes like this: Sakshat kritatmadhi samyak aviparyaya badhitaha kimichan kasya kamaya shariram anusanchvaret. So that means he who has properly realized Brahman, he is fulfilled and is not troubled by erroneous notions. That is Viparita Bhavana. And then he says, desiring what and to please whom will he suffer the afflictions of the body? When we know everything is Brahman, what is there to suffer? It's like in Sankranti we do this sugar molds, that sakrech you would have seen. So imagine the whole universe, whole world is made of this kind of sugar dolls, and we are all in a way sugar dolls made up of Brahman. Our objects of desire, our desire and our everything around us, and what we want to procure, everything is made of sugar only. This sugar doll trying to eat a sugar candy, for what benefit, for what desire? If you yourself is wholly made up of sugar, what is that extra desire you have? Once you internalize that fact that everything is Brahman, your desiring object and yourself, everything is one with Brahman, then there is nothing much to desire. So that's when this triputi of desire, desiring object and desiring subject nullifies and becomes one. As we see in the next slide, verse 136 goes like this. Jagan mityatvadhi bhavat akshiptau kamya kamukau tayor abhave santapaha shamyet nihsneha deepavat. Nihsneha deepavat means like a lamp which is emptied its oil, how that flame goes down and it just gets obliterated. So once this concept of desiring subject and desiring object as two separate entities is taken out, it's like taking out the oil from a lamp and the desire just vanishes. The objects of desire, the desirer. Then in the absence of both of these, the suffering ceases, like a lamp without an oil. Remember that every struggle is backed by karma, desire. And when a karma ends, when the desire ends, activities also will come to an end. Person gets relaxed, and this feverish activity to gain things ends, and this is called tripti, the ultimate step. So this is the journey for shoka nivritti, which is highlighted and introduced in these verses, which will be taken and elaborated further up to 191 up to verse 250. This elaboration of the second half of the verse, the key verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, will be taken along with. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Komal, for giving us an introduction of what is the second line all about and how we enter into the sixth level of shoka nivritti. Let me take up this opening word, which you emphasize, sakshat kritatma dihi. Now, all of us should see ourselves as sakshat kritatma dihi. Sakshat means one who has directly kritatma, whose intellect is now completely fulfilled. Once you know who you are, then what happens? You are not going to be troubled by any form of false notions. We already learned from our past about anything in the objective world and we struggle for, is bad. Bandhakatvam, atriptikaratvam, and dukkha mishritvam. Now we know that all of them are mithya. And why should you desire something? Why do you want to desire a fake currency note? What effort would you do to grab a fake currency note? So that desire is gone. Then you will, in the next set of verses, Dr. Komal mentioned about the triputi, the bhoga, bhokta, and the experiencer, the experienced, and the experience. All the three are mithya. Vidyaranya will clearly tell us that who is the one who is the enjoyer. And once you understand the mithyatvam of your true nature, then that is also gone. And there was a nice example of the lamp that is no longer nourished, when there is no more oil, when Jagan Mithyatvam becomes very clear, the desires naturally disappear just because there is no oil of desire to fulfill it. Our last presentation will be by Dr. Asha Naik. Dr. Asha Naik, please.
Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Jai Gurudev. Trupti Deepa is a lamp of contentment. Jnani has fulfillment in himself. Therefore, he does not require for anything to give him security, peace, and happiness. We all are trying for security, peace, and happiness. And the two difference in all four shlokas is how wise man looks at it and how normal man looks at it. What people expect from sense object that he already has discovered within himself, that is wise man. And this is why Krishna said, Atmaneva eva atmana tushta. And this is the theme for all four shlokas. Next slide, sir. Kim Ichan. Ichan word is there in all the languages. It means desires. It literally means what desire Jnani have. This is a question mark. But this is not question, but assertive answer. Kim Ichan. It means Jnani does not have any desires at all towards worldly objects and persons. Ichha Nirodha and Ichha Nisha or Kama Nisha is the benefit. And as it is said in Sthita Prajna portion, is Prajahati Sada Kaman Partha Manogate. Kama Prahara is the phala. Kama Prahara, Prahara word means you really do Prahara. So Kama will go boom, like no Kama. That is the phala you get because of this. Next slide, sir. Jnani has three things. This is the one that he has self-fulfillment. He's satisfied, he's realized. And second one is Jagata Mithya Darshana. Jagata means all whatever he sees in Jagat is, he knows it is Mithya. That he's already understood. That's how only he becomes fulfilled. That he has practiced sadhana even after getting jnana. Now, third one is his discipline is dosha darshana. And this, through Viveka, he practices dosha darshana and develop vairagya. And Vidyaranya says that habit of dosha darshana continues even after jnana yoga and does not give up. Therefore, he looks at dosha and was prescribed in shloka 139 and 140. 139 and 140, wealth and beauty. So how do you look at the wealth? How wise man looks at the health. And wealth is the every from morning till night, we need wealth for everything. So Vidyaranya has told, who held our hand and told, Hum Brahmasmi, but how do you practically achieve? Every day, unless you deal with this moha of wealth and beauty, you know how to deal with it, then only you will, it will help you to self-realize. Next slide. 139. Arthan Arjane Klesha Swane Bhaivat Paripalane Nashe Dukkham Yaye Dukkham Dig Arthan Klesha Karina. Now, next slide. So there is a difficulty. There is a difficulty in earning money, and that's why it is maintaining money also is difficult. So once somebody has earned money, that is arjane. Artha is money and arjane is earning. So you have all the possessions like money you keep, you build palaces, you build property and possessions. Now you have to maintain it. Maintain is called pariparani or rakshana. You want to maintain it, you want to keep it. So next step after maintaining, what do you do? You want to spend it. What you go to casino and spend and lose all the money. What happens? Money nasha. So it is called nasha dukkha. After spending the money, you feel sad, losing the money. The next other step is vyaya dukkha, spending the money. Here, the person is very miser. He doesn't want to spend money. Even his own bank loan, he doesn't want to return. He's very sad. So wealth with pleasures come trouble and distress. All stages, earning, maintaining, spending, and anyway, whatever, if it goes away also, every time you feel sad. Next slide, sir. In left side, other this thing that Vivek Chudamani and Bhagavad Gita, it has been explained how the wealth, calamities of the wealth, and you can read yourself. Next slide, sir. Slide 140. Here, Masa Pancha Jannalole Japanjare Snaya Asti Granti Shalinya Striya Kam Shobhavan. What is really beautiful about woman, who is but a mass of flesh endowed with muscle, bone, and joints, and that are cased in assembly of restless limbs. The attraction between man and woman is very, very powerful, and each becomes other's weakness and the cause of stress and sun. This is very, very difficult to stop attraction between man and woman. But if you think that this is only skin deep, it is okay. Why is this attraction so powerful? Because all five kamendriyas, all five sense, this thing are involved in it at that time. That's why it is very, very powerful. The truth behind glamour realizes that beauty is only skin deep. You have to think in the picture like that. It is skin, and under the skin, it is the same for everyone. So there is no beauty at all. The body is made of flesh, bone, and blood, packaged attractively by skin. Its limbs, like robot, move about, creating sound and movement, which seems to be sweet and graceful. It is like a factory that takes up food and brings out waste. Knowing thus, the wise men are immune to the sexual attraction as they are to pleasures. Next slide, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Madam. Thank you, Dr. Asha Naik, for a nice explanation of these two verses where Vidyaranya is trying to say, what are the two important areas where people lose control? And one is Kanchana or wealth, and the other is Kamini. So this verse very nicely has been brought out that what is the artham anartham? What is the problem of wealth? There is a problem in earning. There is a problem in preserving your wealth. Whether you like it or not, there is a possibility of losing the wealth. And then even if you spend, you feel sorrowful. And the other problem is about Kamini. We have two more verses for Dr. Asha Naik. Dr. Asha Naik, please.
Verse 142. Shrutiya pida manopi navisham hitamichati mishtandvastutra jananya moodasta jik tatsati. So here what it is told as that the person with hungry can eat poison, doesn't eat poison. So how can you think that a person who has eaten sweets and full, he will eat such a thing? This is compared between the normal man and the wise man. Wise man cannot eat, which is poison. So normal man doesn't eat. So both of them, they don't eat. The wise man, knowing the defects of worldly objects, does not entertain or desire them. Example, children with nut allergy refuse to eat anything with nut, even if it looks very tempting and very attractive, because they have experienced its severe ill effects. Here, poison is compared with all vishayas, and the wise man experiences bliss within. So how can worldly pleasures with all these defects will attract him? Next slide, sir. Shloka 132. Prarabdha karma prabalyat bhogeshu icha bhavate yadi. Klishan ivattadapi esham bhunte vishti gri tattva. Vidyaranya takes small deviation here. The Upanishad and scriptures clearly say that Jnani does not have any desires, but as a result of strength of prarabdha, he will have some desire. Wise may have desires for worldly objects, and even then he experiences the objective enjoyment as if he is dealing with illusory ghosts. That means without attachment and seriousness. There are two types of suffering. One is ignorant man suffers because he does not get what he wants, anything, money, eating, anything like that. But whereas man of wisdom suffer because he really does not want the object, but feels obliged to enjoy, like man getting too much of food after getting full meal. So, conclusion of this. Now we already first two beauty and wealth, and third two slokas he's told about food, which is food is very, very important in everyday's life. So conclusion is what? The object only appear to give happiness, but are actually the abode of sorrow and dukkham. These objects give fleeting joy, but leave long-lasting attachment, craving, and bondage. The objects themselves are impermanent. How can they give lasting joy? They cannot give. The beauty and joy seen objects are superimposed by him when we deeply lose charm and hold. Only when we get desires objects that we realize that it was not what we wanted in first place, or it was not what we thought or it to be. That would not give you joy and we expect from it. It is fanciful and we go for it. So what do we learn? We learn two things. We should not get attached to wealth, beauty, and food. What it says that comes through this superimposing goodness, beauty, joy, and seeing virtues, which may or may not be present in that object. That's how we get attached. So how do we get detached? Detached come through the seeing the definite defective side, like we have seen about the wealth, about the beauty, defective side, alluring objects, pratibandha bhavana, and dosha drishti. So everything when it gives pleasure, you have to have dosha drishti and see other side of it. And then naturally you will get detached and you will try to become a wise man. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, madam, for covering these two important verses. You have covered additional verses also about Artha and Kama, the dangers of Artha and Kama as Kanchana and Kamini.
Jnanam, which is Manda, and Vyavara are inimical. They cannot go hand in hand. But once we are fully and firmly established in this Brahma knowledge, once Jnanam is in our subconscious mind, going about our prarabdha will be easy breezy, aklishyante, without any trouble, however difficult it may appear to the world. We must note a jnani will always lead a dharmic life, as that has become his vasana. He is objective to his ahankara, and ahankara is mithya to him, hence he will not react. Next week, we will go deeper into inquiring what can a complete person can he desire, or does he desire at all? If not, then what drives him to go about his day? Thank you, Dr. Hegde and the team. Our salutations to Vidyaranya Swami. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.